Welcome to a Wonder Junkie podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Anderson, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate the show. That helps people to discover it on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, and it's also on Rumble. Enjoy the episode.
What we call reality is in fact nothing more than a culturally sanctioned and linguistically reinforced hallucination.
To dive into your work, and now I get to speak with you from across the world.
Well, it's my honor to be with you and to be on this podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, you have some amazing books. I Am With You and Welcome Home. And from what I gather, you're working on a new project. I don't know when that's going to be released, but Magic in Real Life and Inspiring Wonder. And that's something that I'm going to be excited to dive into today, if you're willing to share a little bit about that at some point, because this podcast is to inspire curiosity and wonder. And so I think it fits quite well with the audience and what they're all seeking too.
Okay.
So
great. Fine.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into your background a little bit, something I'm curious about, your upbringing and where and how you grew up and some of your foundational belief systems that you had as a child. And then we'll dive into some of your work and how you evolved over time and how you got to be the man that you are in the books that you're writing.
Okay, great.
So what were your initial belief systems and where did you grow up in the world?
Well, my initial belief systems are kind of hazy to me when I was born. But I was born in Sweden. My parents are Swedish and I have a brother and sister. And at the age of 6, or when I was 6, we went off to Afghanistan. And we lived in Kabul for 2.5 years. So I was like torn from my childhood and placed in a pretty scary environment, Kabul at the time in the 50s, middle of the 50s.
Wow.
And after that, we went back to Sweden, and then we went out to Kathmandu, Nepal, where we stayed for 3.5 years, and then back to Sweden. What I got through those travels was, let's say, a global outlook on life that I definitely got. My parents really took us to a lot of other places also, like the pyramids or places in India or Persia or Greece and so on. So we got to see a lot of the world already at an early age. I think that colored me a lot because I've never really felt that I was just a citizen of Sweden. I was much more part of the earth, let's say. And then later I studied physics and geophysics. And my studies of geophysics, they really got me, I really liked those because they gave me an idea of all kinds of things about the earth that I didn't know very much about. Anything from fossils to the atmosphere, to magnetic fields, even, or things like rivers and deltas and mountains and streams and everything like that. It was like a round image of the whole earth. So that stayed with me for still does. I never actually worked as a geophysicist, but what I learned there is still with me a lot.
Yeah. And when you were little, like, why were you guys moving so much? What were your parents doing that you ended up in Afghanistan and these places like Nepal?
My father was a legal advisor. He was a judge in Sweden and a legal advisor. So he advised governments, like, for example, in Nepal, he was a part of a commission that were supposed to delineate the border between China and Nepal. And they could agree about everything except Mount Everest, because both the countries said, no, that's ours. And he, being a neutral person from Sweden, was the only person who could come up with the idea of drawing the border straight across the summit. And that's how it happened in 1962. And that border treaty is still in effect.
Wow,
so
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's what he said was probably the best thing he ever did in his life.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is. It saw to it that there was peace on that border, and there still is.
Wow.
So you can
And so
find mountain from either side, and but you can't go across the top once you're up there. But there are very few gardens up there.
That's amazing. And so what were when you were young and you're laying in bed at night, say 10, 12, 15, these years when you're younger and you were in some scary places early on, but you're starting to see this global perspective, you're traveling around, you're starting to see that the world is not this identification with where you grew up. What was your relationship to, say, was there spirituality involved? Because where it's at now is much different, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, what I realized very early was that I came from a culture where Christianity was the norm.
Okay.
Now, my mother was a Christian, but not a very active one, and my father was, I'd say, an atheist.
Mm.
Uh, but traveling all over, I could see that there were so many different options. And how could I know if Hinduism was correct or if Islam or whatever? I
Hmm.
just realized I want to find out what I want to believe, what I believe in.
Yeah.
And so my whole life has been a search for what I believe in, what I can base my life on, and what I therefore do based
Yeah.
on what I believe in. And so religion was something that changed for me. And I wouldn't say, I would say that I'm a spiritual kind of person, but not that I'm a Christian or any belonging to any other religion, so to speak. I
Yeah.
appreciate a lot of things from all these religions,
Hmm.
but then I think one should add there were like moments where I we had servants in Nepal, all foreigners did, and they were my best friends, and they took me to places out in nature at a stream which you couldn't see otherwise. It that was like magic for me.
Wow.
So it was. I started to believe my own experiences more than what anybody else told me.
I love hearing how people's psychology develops and how your spirituality, if you want to call it that, develops. And that's really powerful to hear because in Nepal, that's like the heart chakra of the freaking world. And then you ended up in Sedona, which is my backyard, where I've spent quite a bit of time. And so I'd love to maybe dive into how you ended up in Sedona and some of the people you spent time with, some of the elders and people that were helping you to understand different perspectives to help you write these books.
Okay. Well, first of all, to before I make the jump from around 25 or something after my studies to when I went to Arizona, which when I was 44,
Mm.
I this was at the time during that time, let's say in the 1970s, I visited and stayed at two different, I call them intentional communities, which was the norm back then. There was a lot of communes and things like this.
Mm.
And there, in one of them, I was in charge of what we called an open university. So I could invite people from all over the world to do uh, workshops and talk about uh, their work. People like Rupert Sheldrake or
Mm.
um, Peter Caddy, the founder of Findhorn,
Cool.
or a guy called Cleve Baxter, who worked with communication with plants, things like that. So already there, I was working a lot with unusual things, let's say. And
Okay.
then I had already, before that, worked with, it just happened by chance that I started, quote, regressing people to past lifetimes. And there I made a point of finding out if they could have happened the way they told me. And I was amazed to find details that nobody that they couldn't have known about. So I kept on following my interests more than following a career or something like that.
Love it.
And after those years in these communities, my wife had started to take some courses with a on a spiritual path called the Deer Tribe or the Sweet Medicine Sundance Path, which is located in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I was fascinated by what I heard from her. And after a year or two, I joined her in that. And that's the main reason why we went and stayed in Arizona, so we could follow those, let's say, shamanic spiritual teachings and ceremonies, which
Mm.
it consisted of. And it was, let's say, an eclectic combination of Native American teachings and teachings from South America and Australia. But it also included like modern insights of psychology or spirituality also.
Mm, beautiful. Can you go back into these intentional communities? Were you also doing some esoteric type practices? Was there meditation, breath work, things of that nature? Or is it more logical, scientific, but also metaphysical?
Well, those were two different communities. One was based on creativity and art
Okay.
and had nothing in terms of spirituality, although that was where I started later on with these regressions into past lives, but that was separate. The other one was more of a large scale attempt to create a model for a community that included information or ideas from different areas, if it was from permaculture or healing or including spirituality. So there was spirituality there as was a part of it, but there was no formal, let's say, meditation or things like this.
I see. And so you said you met Rupert Sheldrake. That was quite a long time ago. Was he already deep into a lot of his work at that time, or was he just developing it?
No, he was already deep in that. I read his very first book as it came out. That was one of the first experiences I had of a spiritual nature, because I was in a bookstore and this book just grabbed me. I couldn't stop taking it and opening it. It looked very theoretical because it was more or
Hmm.
less his thesis,
Yeah.
and I had to buy it. And so I got into the whole idea of morphogenetic fields at the time. But
Yeah.
I would say when we invited him was maybe um, 8 years later or something like that, when he was established for his morphogenetic fields uh, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always appreciated him and his work. I read The Science Delusion years ago, and he had
Okay.
a TED talk that was banned. And I ended up at an event where he was speaking about some of that, and him and Graham Hancock and people. So I've always really resonated with his. Just his
Right.
ideas about morphic genetic fields and energy systems that, because I used to have really weird experiences myself where I would be tapping into this idea of akashic fields or morphic fields, and I didn't
Uh,
have words for it. So he was very helpful to reverse engineer some of those early experiences.
and why was it forbidden, or why was it? Yeah,
What was forbidden?
the book,
Um,
or no, his TED
oh,
talk.
oh, I see. Yeah, his TED talk was banned because TED is a very dogmatic organization. They've
Oh,
banned many people's talks, and they're very they're scientific thought leaders and people of this sort, but they're known for being very highly censored, and they're not willing to hear ideas that are outside of their own comfort zone, if you will. And so when you
right.
ban a talk here, they actually get more publicity, and it ends up doing the backfire on them.
Okay. Because I was
Yeah.
planning to hold a TED talk. That's
Well, good luck keeping it on the internet. But if it gets banned, you'll actually get more
okay.
views, which is pretty cool. So
Okay.
don't worry about
I won't
it.
be sad. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, so I'd love to learn more about what were some of the profound insights that you gained when you were studying geophysics. And that was probably pretty transformational too, to start that early development of learning about the planet and physics at the same time.
Yes. First of all, it gave me a. I at first I thought that geophysics was just about the physical Earth, uh, and so and about things like minerals and petrology and things like this, which it also is. But seeing the whole of how everything interacts with each other, how the weather uh, actually is one process that is happening all over the world. It is not just localized and so on.
Mm,
So mm, I would say it gave me a complex view of the entire Earth and its place in the solar system also. That was included in the studies. And then hands-on
Wow.
things like we did, we went to southern Sweden and were hammering to find trilobites and things like this, very hands-on stuff,
Wow.
where you then find a trilobite and you realize, wow, this little guy, he was alive here 25 million years ago. I
Yeah.
mean, that is incomprehensible. But you see it, and you're tapping on a rock that looks normal, and then you inside the rock you see this imprint, and you know
Wow.
this used to be the ocean floor, and this little guy had been swimming and falling down, and then sedimentation came on top of that, and now I am here 25 million years ago. Nobody's seen this guy before, and I finally find him in my hand.
Yeah.
It's a pretty incredible thing. Yeah, and so many things are incredible if we just stop to think about them. I mean, I'm holding this pen here in my hand. What did it take to make this pen? I mean, it took it took the development of writing. I mean, there's so much stuff that goes into everything that we surround ourselves with. So
Yeah.
wherever we look, there's much more. We're part of a whole history, and we're part of the future through what we're doing also. So it's pretty amazing, our lives on Earth, if you think about it.
Absolutely. I love when people like you and others that get incredibly curious and then in their later years are able to sort of share what you've accomplished and learned through, and a lot of times it's just humbling. It seems a lot of my favorite thinkers are just always so humbled by the nature of
Yeah,
reality because of
yes,
how intricate and interconnected and magical it truly is if we just get curious.
yeah,
You know, curiosity leads to all those infinite doorways. I
yeah.
think I read an article, you've probably read it, I Am Pencil, and it talks about just something
Oh,
as simple as a pencil and the complexity of what it took to get a pencil. I always
oh,
highly encourage people to read that. It's like what you just said about the pen, but it goes into
right.
all the chains of events that had to happen to make something as
Exactly.
simple as a pencil.
Yes, yes. And that
Yeah.
connects what I used to think, okay, our ancestors, they're not so important. I'm living here now, and okay, they lived their lives, but they're gone now, and so on. Until I realized, like we said here, what they did, what they all have done to make this possible, which is here now. And so
Yeah.
this should make us, like you say, humble, and it should make us respectful of both life and them, for they went through a lot of stuff themselves, at
Yeah.
least as much as we did. Major changes that I went through, that came through this one single ceremony in this deer tribe, as we called it. That changed my whole life, because through that ceremony, I realized, or I experienced, that the earth is not just incredibly interesting and fascinating, but that it is alive and, I'd say, conscious and able to and wanting to communicate with us humans. And because she has a lot to tell us in her
Okay.
own words, so to speak.
Hmm.
And that was an amazing thing that put me in a position where I have to go out with that message, so to speak. I sometimes feel like, these indigenous people who Kogi or whoever they are, who come out and say, hey, our ancestors have asked us or our people have asked us to tell you about the times you're living in and what needs to change or something. I'm not telling anybody what needs to change. I'm just telling people what I experienced, basically. But
Well, I'd love to go into some of the details of what that ceremony looked like and some of those obvious elements that made you realize that the planet is conscious and that it's intelligent. Because I've had my own experiences too, in a different way through the jungle experiences and plant medicines that showed me, but
yeah,
it didn't come through the same way as it did to you. And
yeah,
so I'd love to hear what some of that looked like and felt like and what you gained from that.
yeah. First of all, I think you're absolutely right that people get experiences in very, very many different ways. Some experience a communication through feeling, and some through visual things, some hear things, and some just sense or just know things. So there's no set rule for how you communicate with the living world or with the planet or anything like this. But it was a ceremony that had the intent of remembering. We did 3 ceremonies like that, remembering past lives. Now, whether you believe in them or not, and I'm still not 100% sure, because all it takes is to be able to tap into other people's lives, and we might think that they were ours, because we see them or experience them. So, but anyway, using that paradigm of having lived before, we were asked to do, it was a kind of a guided trance, but it was based on it was a fairly high ceremony in terms of what you needed to have gone through before then, what teachings you needed to know, ceremonies that you'd already done to cleanse out your whole emotional system and so on. And in a sense, it was a collective ceremony with many people on the floor, so to speak, lying, but it entailed things like calling in the powers and so on, setting the stage by creating, you could say, a container, a spiritual container for this to be possible, to go back in time this way. And then it was like a guided trance, which a light trance. It wasn't something where somebody told you to now do this or whatever. More or less, it was like letting you enter into a deeper state. And I had that experience with others, doing it with others, getting them to that point, with about 150 different people I had done that with. But in this case, it was me, and I had never done that before until these 3 times. And the first 2 times I got vague images, not all that concrete. Well, one was quite interesting, but this third one, I found myself, and I knew I was in a trance, that I was not my quote normal self. I found myself on a spaceship. I knew I was on a spaceship. And I don't really like spaceships. I mean, I don't like aliens. What I've heard about aliens is usually negative stuff. So I tend to stay away from them. But I decided I didn't have anything else to go by. So I explored where I was. I went through a corridor, and then I opened a door, and it was a darkened room. But at the end of the room, I saw light coming in from a window. So I walked up to the window and I looked out, and I saw the earth. And it was amazing with the colors and the green and the grays and the cloud swirling and things like this. And as I was looking at it, totally awed, I heard a voice in my head. Now, I don't usually hear voices in my head at all. And this voice, I knew in this trance state, I knew that this was the earth that I was seeing who was speaking to me. And she said, I say she, I used to say it, but slowly I've gotten used to saying she, because as she told me, she is mainly female, but also male, so to speak. And she said, now that we have established this connection through this very complex ceremony, I want you to go up here on a mountain in Phoenix, Arizona, where I was, and talk to me outside of any ceremonial preparations or anything, without no trance, no nothing, just talk to me. And I thought, okay, and I said yes, and then the image disappeared, and that was it. That was my whole ceremony.
Okay.
Now, it took me a week before I decided to actually follow up on that, because I thought, I can't, I'm not Moses. I don't go up on mountains and talk to God or the earth or something. But I had to do something. I had to, if you start doing something like this, you had to follow up on what comes. So I
Yeah.
went
How
up
did it,
there.
just real quick, how did it feel when you had that experience on the spaceship before the couple weeks passed and you went up that hill? When you came out of that trance, how profound was it at the time? Like, was it really earth shattering to you? Was it just light and true? What did it feel like?
Well, it feels like I've been to the movies, but it was a real movie. I mean, I knew it was a trance state, that I was in a trance state, but it was more real than, let's say, if I had experienced a past lifetime and somebody tells me something.
Hmm.
That wasn't the feeling. The feeling was that this is real.
Okay.
This is definitely real. But it wasn't actually until those conversations started, because this had just been a short little blimp like that.
I see.
Go up in the mountain and talk to me.
Yeah.
So I had to think about, okay, now should I do that? When should I do that? Where is there a good mountain to go to? And is something going to come out of it, or is this just a down the rabbit hole kind of thing?
Yeah. Do you remember what mountain you picked and why?
Yes, if you know the streets in, you know Shea Boulevard.
Yep.
Now, if you take that to the west, as far as you can get,
Yeah.
uh, around, I don't know what street it is, but 30th or something like that. You come to a mountain range that on the other side you have Phoenix, and on this
Yep.
side you have parts of Phoenix, I think, and then Scottsdale.
Yeah.
So
That's
at the end of
probably
that,
Piestewa. It used to be Squaw Peak, but Piestewa and the whole mountain preserve right there, maybe.
okay, I'm not even sure what the preserve or something is called. I just
Okay.
walked
Yeah, I'm just curious.
my car and I just walked up,
Okay.
and it was it was interesting because I was like, there I was in a really open state, and I thought, where should
Mm.
I go? Where should I go? And I thought up there, but there was a little kid up there, and he was waving to me, and I thought, oh, that's not a good place. And then I looked to the other direction, and there I saw a hawk flying around a peak, and I decided to go up there. And then I sat up there thinking, well, I don't know, kind of awkward. What do I do now? I had a little block of paper with me so I could take notes, a notebook.
Hmm.
Um, and so I thought, well, how do I do this now? And I closed my eyes and I thought back to the moment when I had seen the earth and when she'd spoken to me. And suddenly I heard the voice again. And it said, you were led here, which to me
Mm.
meant, okay, the bird was a medicine sign, as they say, for me to go there. And thus started, and I was sitting up there and I started to take notes because she kept on talking. And I asked questions once in a while, and she said she wanted me to come up there about 2 to 3 times a week for 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, quite a long, quite often. Then the transmission, so to speak, would be finished, and that's what happened. And if I now, for example, try to connect with the earth, I can, but only if I really, really focus very strongly. And when I wrote the book or the books, I decided that I had to separate myself out into nature and there in order to be sure that I got it from that source and did not invent stuff myself.
Yeah. Can you talk about some of the major elements that you were writing down that you got written down for that book, I Am With You?
Yeah. Well, first of all, she said, I, the earth, am conscious. I'm a conscious living being. And I mean, that's news. That might kick me off of TED Talks right there.
Totally. Good.
Then she spoke about many different things. And some of them were like more poetically written. Some were more hard fact stuff. She talked about how life had emerged on Earth. She said that it was through the quote lovemaking between the sun and the earth that sparked life on Earth. Now, this is not something that science would normally agree with, but normally you've heard of the primal soup and how lightning is supposed to spark some amino acids and so on. Well, just a few years ago, NASA came out and said, in their view, the life on Earth couldn't have arrived in that way because of the energy needed or what the situation on Earth was at the time. Instead, they think it was super eruptions from the sun that that helped spark that on Earth. So that to me was a slight confirmation about some factual things that she said.
Yeah.
But what she was basically saying is that she is with us all the time. She is present with us all the time, and we do not notice this. We're not aware of this. And now, of course, this is something that any Native American would subscribe to. He would say, of course, the Earth is alive. And the natives in Ecuador or Colombia or many other places, or the Aborigines, they know all this stuff. But when a white guy says it, it's like taboo suddenly.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. She spoke about the power of trust and the power of beauty. How beauty is something that assembles other forces in its power, so to speak, and can affect a lot of things. She spoke also about about perception and how she wants to be seen by us humans, and saying that the space age is in part a fulfillment of an agreement that humans have with the Earth, namely to be seen by humans from outside. And this later on led me to this thing we briefly spoke about, globes and so on.
Right.
She spoke a lot about the weather, and that what humans do influence the weather, and she doesn't just mean through whatever our industry or things like this. She spoke about a lot about the relationship between humans and the Earth. And she basically said also that she's not trying to change how we act. She's trying to change, so to speak, how we relate to each other. She wants to have an intimate relationship with humans in a conscious way. We have it anyway, she says, because you are living inside the Earth. The Earth includes its whole atmosphere and magnetic fields and so on. And so we are within the Earth. And we're also of the Earth, of course. All our elements have come from Earth. And life came through the sun, or through the combination of sun and Earth. So she's saying the rest will follow. Once you agree to and enter into a communicative relationship with the Earth, with me, the Earth, then everything will change anyway. So it's not like she's not telling us to stop using CO2 or whatever. And that's a pretty main thing. And she wants to be perceived. And I think that goes for us also. I think if we as humans are not seen, this limits us very much. If you raise a baby without any human contact, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be quite as alive.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like the human condition, how we get ourselves into such messes with war and the way that we somewhat rape the planet and dominate it and think of ourselves as separate, or as the people that are, taking spaceship Earth and, harnessing it, if you will. It is a lack of that relationship to the planet. And it seems like all of the indigenous cultures that you spoke to not to say that they were so advanced or enlightened in certain degrees, but they had a natural relationship to the earth and to the cosmos that was
Yes.
more humbling, which would keep you from even wanting to have the hubris to try and change the weather or manipulate viruses or own certain parts of land, and so it really is an interesting thing that you experienced, which gave you somewhat of a homework assignment to then go and share this because you felt so motivated to somewhat give this to the average person that's not Aboriginal or Indigenous, which I think is really important to bridge the worlds of science and, you know, I guess you could call it just the nature of reality, because I feel like our reductionist scientific model, if I was to have Lawrence Krauss on, which I have coming on in a few weeks, he's an astrophysicist,
Mhm.
he would quickly dismiss a lot of what you're saying based on lack of empirical evidence. And the scientific method can't measure subjectivity, which is like your existential experience of that beautiful experience that you're having on the mountaintop. And he can't measure what is heartache and what is what are some of the components of the human existential condition that we just dismiss completely. And I think we need to remember that the mystery is the magic, and that subjectivity should not be completely dismissed, you
Right.
know and so anyway, I want you to carry on and talk a little bit about what happened with the motivation to then give this information to more people.
Well, the motivation did not just come from me, it came from the earth, because the third time I was up on the mountain, I was asked to go out with or publish what I received, what I was writing down, so to speak. Now, I did write it up, and I made a summary of it, and I showed it to some people, but I just got blank stares back. So I put the whole thing on ice. And then years went by, and this was in 1996 that I had this experience. And then it took until 2011 or 12 until well, in 2010, I became 60 years old. And I thought, if I don't write this book now, I'm never going to do this. So I
Hmm.
rented a cabin out in nature and saw to it that I regained the connection that I had so I could ask more questions about what I had received. And that worked very well. And so I published the book back in 2012. And then 5 years later, I was asked to write another book. And I based that on questions that the first book had elicited in some of my readers.
Mm.
And again, I separated myself out and asked those questions, got the answers, and made them into a small book. Actually, what I've done now is in the first book that you mentioned, I Am With You, there I wrote what the earth said, and then I said my comments to it, and then again what the earth said in my own comments. But
Mm.
I heard some people say, well, I'd like to read it without your comments. So again, that humbled me a bit. So he said, I didn't like what you were writing. So, so I thought I'd give that a try. So what I did was I put the two books together, and it took away in the first book what I had been saying. The second one was practically everything that the earth was saying. And I give it a new title, and I don't know if you can see this, but it's called The Earth Speaks: Conversations with Our Living Planet.
Mm.
And that one consists, as I said, about both these books and a couple of paragraphs or chapters at the end about the Globe project that we'll talk about a bit also.
Yeah.
Um, and uh,
What was allowing you to have the free time and the space to be able to write and to have time to do this and be in a cabin?
okay,
Were you working at the same time or?
I'll speak about that. But just to mention, this one is available on Amazon, so
Oh,
anybody
perfect.
can get it. Yeah, and the other two are also. Um,
Awesome.
I After those years in the communities that I was speaking about, there I could work and didn't have to pay anything, so I didn't need much money there. And when I left I realized, oh, I have to make a living here to live. I can't just do what I want.
Yeah.
So I looked around and I thought, what could I possibly do? And I realized I knew languages pretty well. I knew German and I knew English. My Swedish I was about to forget. And I still am a bit wobbly sometimes in Sweden. I don't really speak the lingo, so to speak. But so I started translating from German to English. And this could do wherever I was. So I did that for about 30, 40 years
Oh, cool.
um, for individuals, for translation companies. I translated books. I translated
Mm.
for certain projects or industry and so on. So I had a wide spectrum there. Now, today, this is very difficult. You just go on DeepL or whatever and get a translation. That's pretty as good
Yeah.
as I could do it, more or less. Not quite. Yeah,
Right.
so that's how I made my money, basically.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I would love to hear, you brought up something about not liking aliens, and it made me think about a lot of things, but the transhuman movement, there's an obvious push right now. It's almost like a new religion, the scientists and technologists that are trying to upload consciousness into human computers and, plug ourselves into Neuralink, all the stuff that's happening. And a lot of them really believe that we are just a phase and that technology is this new thing, which I don't truly resonate with the transhumanist movement. And I'm sure you probably don't either. But have you given thought to, and I'm curious your perspective on aliens and transhumanism? Like, what do you think about other intelligent life forms throughout the cosmos? And what do you think about the people here that are trying to go into the cosmos and maybe spread life to other planets? And we would be the aliens to them.
Yeah, we would. Uh, I First of all, I haven't given much thought to it. I didn't even know the term transhumanism.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't kept up with that. When I think of aliens, I think of cattle mutilations and abductions and things like this. All, as I see it, negative stuff without any kind of warmth or empathy or something like this.
Okay.
And I do believe definitely that there are intelligences in the universe. I somehow also tend to believe that they tend to have a hands-off attitude, and that I mean we can't count on other intelligences to solve our own problems.
Right.
Now, uploading our intelligences, what do we do when we die? We probably upload our intelligence then. But
Mm-hmm.
that goes into a larger realm, and nobody knows what happens then. I
Right.
think there's a transitional phase as you die, but I don't think anybody has been to where you then actually are.
Yeah.
Although channels and so on do a pretty good work of let's say imitating other beings, or
Yeah.
quite possibly correct stuff, because I've been working some with channels, and I have a high respect for them also,
Okay.
especially the ones that have it since childhood or something like this.
Yeah.
So I can't say very much about aliens.
Okay.
I'd be happy if I met a benevolent alien, and because I'd have a lot of questions. It's
Yeah.
my curiosity again, but it's
Yeah.
nothing I'm counting on.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what your thoughts were around it. There's something I wanted to lay out and hear your perspective on. I had an experience or two in the Amazon jungle of quite a few years ago where I basically zipped so far out of my body and saw planet Earth, and got to
Wow,
really, sort of like you before I stumbled upon your work, have my own experience of
great.
wow, the awe and the wonder. And one of the things that it made me contemplate when I returned was that 90% of the species that have ever lived on this planet have gone extinct, and that planet Earth is like this living, old, wise thing, and that
Yes.
we're just like a new thing, a new phenomena that's emerged out of it, if you will, or inside of it. And that it was it would be hubris for us to think that it was our duty to save the earth because it's so big and vast and intelligent and old, and we're
Yeah.
so tiny in comparison. But yet we're not separate from it. And so it showed me in the experience that the humility and the lack of desire to try to save it or fix it. And I could see that that was part of the issue that we're dealing with here, is this hubris to think that we should go and save the earth. Well, when I got back from that, what it did show me was it shoved me back into my body. And I remember wiggling my fingers and seeing that I was embodied again. Okay, I'm not in this out of body experience. I'm back in. And what then I said was like, well, what do you do here? You know, I always ask that. So what's the point? What is the point of being here? And it just kept, every time it always just creates a vibrational shift of love and appreciation. And that state that I was in made me realize that that might be the orientation towards just genuine gratitude for the fact that you're having an experience with Earth and in the Earth. And, you know, raising your vibration, meaning get some more sunshine, get more sleep, keep this little thing that you are and the planet that you're part of healthy. And that would be quite a decent orientation to begin with in
So,
itself, because then you have the energy. So what do you think of all that?
well, I fully agree with you. And saving the planet or saving the earth, I think that is total hubris.
Right.
What we can maybe do is saving parts of nature that we have destroyed already. I mean,
Right.
we can reintroduce the bald eagle or whatever.
Yeah.
We can help undoing some of the bad things we've done, but not by doing more bad things like geoengineering and so on. And
Right.
that was a definite thing that suddenly came up in the conversation with the Earth. She said, by the way, what some people are contemplating is this geoengineering, and that is like throwing a spanner into the engine of a locomotive. Yes, it will change things, but you never know how it will change, and
Right.
it can destroy it, and so on. So, and I, the Earth, I'm definitely against that kind of
Yeah.
technology. Was what she said.
Mm-hmm.
As to the second part there about what should one do and so on, I think
Mm-hmm.
the best example of that is what the astronauts who were on the moon, how they reacted. Well, first of all, half of them, and these were like sharp fighter pilots, especially in the beginning. Uh, they more than half of them cried when they saw the Earth. So it was such an immediate uh, feeling that they got. Uh, and they came away with the feeling that the Earth is such a precious place, and we have to stop using her in this way. And they all, more than half, when they came back down to Earth, decided to create organizations to help the planet in some way, um, focusing on things like climate change or whatever. There is enough work to be done. So there's something magical that happens when you see the Earth from outside. Now, sometimes I think that when we incarnated onto Earth, we probably passed from I don't know where, and we probably saw the Earth where we were heading for. So that it is in the sense that we're remembering the image of the Earth. And the first time the image of the Earth was seen from the first satellites, uh, or for example, this image called Earthrise, where the Earth seems to rise from the barren surface of the moon. That photograph has been said to have started the whole ecological movement.
Yeah.
And so, and it went around the Earth. I mean, there were like color pictures in
Yeah.
the New York Times that covered the first half page and things like this. And the astronauts went around the world and met with the kings and queens all over the world. It was such a powerful thing. It was
Yeah.
at least as powerful as going to the moon itself. And even the astronauts who went to the moon, one of them said, we didn't come to the moon to look at the moon. We came to the moon to look back at the Earth, our home.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's just the realization when you're that far out, you get a whole different perspective on your life and on life on Earth, because you're looking at where everything in our lives happens. We're looking at where wars are happening, where happiness and marriages and funerals and love and hatred and everything, and mining. And so it's like we take ourselves far away and we look back at ourselves. And
Yeah.
that shift, that changes something in you, because you're both out there and looking at the Earth. If
Yeah.
that's I'm getting into the whole globe idea. Having
Yes.
the idea, I can tell you how that arose, which was also a very unusual thing.
Yeah. I'd love to hear about that, and also like the motivation to give people this Earth perspective from outside. That's what Stuart
Yes,
Brand, he was the one that put that image on the
that's
magazine
right.
that went
Mr.
viral.
Brown, exactly.
Yeah.
So you remember
Genius.
that whole Earth catalog? Huh?
Oh yeah. I
Right,
have
'cause
it.
you're pretty young.
Well, it came way before me, but I love Stuart Brand, and I think he's one of our
Yeah,
most interesting people that's done so many
yes,
cool things.
I agree. I totally agree. Totally agree. Well, this time I was several years after having spoken to after I've spoken to the Earth. I was doing another ceremony, and I was lying down on the ground, and I connected with the ground. I had been in what they call a purification lodge, um, native, yeah. And if you get squeezy or something, if you feel unwell, you should lie down on the earth and connect with the earth. And this I did, and I thought, hey, it wasn't a long time ago that I talked to the earth. So I said, hey, Earth, do you have something to tell me? And I got one single sentence. Yes, write a letter to Al Gore. Okay, I didn't know what to write, but so I said, okay, I can do that. But what about? And I didn't get an answer. So then it took me another week approximately until I remembered that I'd read an article in a magazine or in a newsletter about him and how he had had a dream when he was in the White House in 1998. You might know about this dream. Huh? And he dreamt about a satellite that was placed between Earth and the Sun, where the attraction, the gravity to each one was equal, so it could stay put. And it looked back and saw the sunlit part of the Earth the whole time. And it sent those images down to Earth, and they were put on the internet. So everybody could log on and see the Earth right now as she looks right now.
Yeah.
I was fascinated, totally fascinated by that, because then I thought, this is what the Earth said. It wanted to be seen. So here we have the possibility not just for a few astronauts to see the Earth as she looks right now. And this thing about something being live has a very special connotation. It's like the difference between seeing a person or seeing a photograph or something.
Yeah.
And so, but I still didn't know what to write. So I had to come up with something, and I invented. I said, I think that any any project where humanity for the first time can see itself should benefit organizations who are doing something about the Earth, something positive with the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent it off, and I didn't think I'd get any answer from the vice president, although he wasn't vice president anymore. This was, I think, in 2001 or two. But 3 weeks later, I got an answer, and I asked for connections to make this happen, and I got the name and phone number of the guy at NASA who was in charge of it. So I called up, and that was an easy one. Al Gore told me to call you. And so I got connected with all the people.
We had some technical difficulties, and Sten got kicked off the studio for some reason. So we waited quite a while here. This is probably 6 minutes, 7 minutes later so far, and then entered back into the conversation and picking up where we left off.
It was on my side because my whole computer froze up.
Okay. Well, it looked like your upload speed was going good. So where we left off,
Okay.
you were speaking about Al Gore giving you NASA's phone number, and you got on the phone with NASA, and all of a
Okay.
sudden you had him that gave you the number, so you had some credibility there.
Yeah. Well, I followed up on that project for several years until it became clear that it would not be launched, the satellite, because he'd had a dream of this satellite. And the next day he called up the head of NASA, and asked if he could come over, just to ask him, is it possible to place a satellite there? Which the guy from NASA, the head of NASA, said yes. And they actually built the whole thing as a satellite like that, but it was never launched, at least not at the time. Later, it was reconfigured to look at the sun instead, and its
Okay.
name was changed. But when I realized that it wasn't going to be sent up, this satellite, I thought, well, was this just a goose chase on the part of the Earth asking me to write to him, and then everything that had happened? I thought, well, maybe one could do this with private, as a private project. So I went to Houston, Texas, and visited a company called Space Incorporated, something like that, and spoke to the head of that company. They're a satellite company, and they said, yes, we can do that. It would cost us 85 million bucks and 10 million a year. Well, I didn't have that kind of money, but I thought it was interesting anyway. And he said one other thing. He said, by the way, there's another point on the other side of the Earth where you have a point where you can also put a satellite in a stable orbit. Actually, it's a figure eight that it does, which looks at the dark side of the Earth.
Mm.
And that's when I thought, and that was my contribution to the whole thing. That's when I thought, well, if we have those two images from those two satellites, we can project them onto a globe, and we would see the Earth live as she looks right now. And that to me was electrifying, the idea of seeing a three-dimensional Earth, not just watching a screen that looks like the Earth, but having it in your living room as something that you live with.
Mm.
And this I started to pursue. Well, at the time, and this was around 2008, I think it was not possible. First of all, I didn't have the 2 times $85 million plus $20 million a year, nor were there any globes that were so cheap that so low cost that you could have them in your living room, let's say. They were all cost between the smallest one between 5 and 250,000.
Wow.
So I put it on ice, and then a few years ago I had another connection with the Earth who said, now is the time for this project. And since then I've been pursuing it because the prices come down, and also I have realized through people I've been working with that I don't need to send up any satellites. I can use images from existing satellites. You can use them from geostationary satellites, 3 of them, you can put that together. And
Wow.
we're right now creating these images that would put them together, which is a pretty complicated feat to put them together so that they look the way it really looks. You have to have color harmonization, and you have to check to see how often are these downloaded and so on. Yeah, and so that's what I'm working on.
Where are you at with that project? Have you created anything that's physical yet?
Well, no, but we are. I created a nonprofit organization called livingglobes.org. I mean, that's the website where I talk about this. But we, having tried unsuccessfully to raise money for it, and it would take a fair amount of money, I'm now instead here in Germany starting a for-profit organization, because that interests people more, because that's easier to raise money in that way. And we're beginning by creating the images, and they can be used for smaller or larger globes, and we're talking to different globe companies that would want to incorporate them on all their globes,
Yeah.
and for planetariums and science centers and so on. And the next step would be developing, and there we're also talking to some companies developing globes that are affordable. To me, affordable means below the price of an iPhone, or below $1,000, let's say,
Yeah.
and uh, and that you can have in your, like, a 16-inch or 12-inch globe that you can have in your living room. You can live with it. You can see how the day turns to night. You can see how how the weather is just one process, and that
Wow.
what happens over there carries on all over the world,
Yeah.
over the earth, and so that you can realize that it is one living organism in many ways. You can create apps where you can see how the temperature has changed over the last thousands of years. You
Wow.
can even show how the tectonic plates, where they were 100 million years ago, and how they have moved since then, and where they will be in another 100 million years. You can show a lot of stuff about it. It's perfect for schools, for example, also, because
Yeah.
you can show anything. You can show the movement of plastic in the oceans, or the ocean currents, or even
Yeah.
all the flights. There are programs that show all the airplanes that are in the air right now. You can check it all
Wow.
out, or the wind speeds. You can do all this stuff on touch screen globes, where you program it by touching them, so to speak.
Wow. That's going to
So
be
that's
amazing.
what we're working on. I'm right now looking for investors for this part, for the
Yeah.
part where we first of all make the images.
Yeah. I love this idea a lot because when Stuart Brand was inspired to make that image happen, which changed the world, like you said, and created this ecological movement and the green movement, all these things, I like try to imagine what it felt like to be a human being before we had that image,
Yeah,
because I grew up where it was already, I inherited that image. I got to see the image, and I've always had access to our modern scientific imagery and movies and stories and books and Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot. And that has always been this beautiful thing to me where I'm like, in my inner experience, which is what we're always doing, we're interpreting reality. I have an image of the earth, and which has given me these incredible experiences. But how much more powerful of a change would it be to have one sitting in your school or in a hospital or in your living room as a
right.
young person, and coming up with this witnessing out of body experience at all times where you can do this. So I can see it making a really positive inner change that allows people to behave and orient so differently. So I love the inspiration here.
Yeah, it automatically makes you think globally. You
Yep.
cannot do anything but that. You are
Yeah.
putting one of your eyes out in space and looking back at where you are right now. With the
Yeah.
other eye, you're sitting there looking at the globe.
Yeah.
So it really, I believe it will have a very big effect on people who have these and who live with them, and who can show their kids, this is where we are and this is what's happening, and so on. They see
Yeah.
that there are no real borders. It's not like, okay, this is France and this is Germany. It's all from outside, it looks just like one continent or one globe. So
Yeah.
a lot of things change when you see the earth that way.
Yeah. Well, I
And then
imagine it creates a reciprocity element too, where you feel like you're in a reciprocal relationship to Earth and then to other people. And that could be a positive thing in itself.
and you realize that the earth is, you can see how during the seasons the Arctic and the Antarctic grow and and diminish, and so you can see it breathe in so many different ways.
Wow.
And that's you can speed things up. You can speed things up so you can see how the weather has happened over the last uh, week or so. So you can follow it all. You can do
Mm,
incredible stuff, and many of these apps that do these things already exist.
yeah.
But now you'd have them at home, so to speak.
Wow. I can almost picture too, like having it in maybe, like you said, the planetarium or some place where they could turn the lights off. And
Yeah,
behind you, if it's sitting in the center, in the background is that like deep field image that we have where you can see all the galaxies, the billions
Yeah,
of galaxies, to show
yeah,
also how connected we are to the infinite, universe too. And then on the micro level, they could then click up to a screen behind it where they're showing how DNA works, and on the molecular biophysical level of our bodies, which
yeah,
is like universes upon universes. And then here we are watching all of that happen inside of that container. I just feel like if you blow people's minds, the awe and the wonder is humbling enough as a spiritual experience that you don't need to add any kind of old tribal, you know, religious ideas that make us fight upon one each other about who's God and what we're supposed to be doing here. It's like, no, actually, we should all be humble and go, we don't know what's going on, but we are a living, breathing, happening in the middle of a universe. Let's just be cool with each other. We're on team human here.
I agree. Well put. Absolutely. And the idea of having, I think the first time one turns this thing on, one should be in a darkened room. So that
Yeah.
one should imagine being out in space and watching it. Now,
Yep.
I agree, it would be nice with stars behind you. And there's one thing that I'm sad about is that I don't know how to recreate the atmosphere because a lot of
Hmm.
the astronauts they speak about the fragile atmosphere and how important it is to protect her. But I can't put a fog around this thing, or it's
Oh,
at some point it'll be possible, I think, but I
yeah.
haven't found any way to do it yet.
Yeah.
But
That'll be
we'll see.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And I imagine while they're building this thing, AI is going to come in handy because all those images that you're feeding through this massive
yeah,
processing power, they can come up with things now that are so significant. And it's
yeah.
like, all right, just using technology and all the things that you have, that'll be interesting. I'm excited to see that.
I really like AI, and I use it a lot. I use Chat GPT a lot, and I've sometimes said that even more impressive than AI is EI, the Earth intelligence, and that's
Yeah,
what would be presented here.
cool. And
And
then the morphic fields, going back to Rupert's work, when he would show these experiments where if you teach a rat or a mouse to go through a maze in one part of the world, we have this collective intelligence. And I feel like when people have this experience, it could be, telepathic, if you will, where we all over at one point in time, we all have this cosmic perspective that we inherit immediately. I do believe that we have that collective
yeah,
intelligence.
and I think this living globe will contribute to that
I do
because
too.
the Earth is one of the few things that are common to all people and all animals and everything. Yeah, for
Yeah.
us,
Yeah, and if
and
we
so
can't preserve it, or at least to the degree that we can live in relationship to it, even if we, like I said earlier, with my perspective of don't save the earth, but I meant it in the most far away, distant vantage point. But on the micro level, we need to preserve it in regards to if we want to live here, we won't make it if we don't keep it sustainable to our relationship, treating it
yeah,
right.
yeah, you're right.
We won't make it. So,
And I think that we won't make it until we start talking to the Earth. Uh, and the it what the Earth was saying, it wants to have a communication in our language with the
yeah,
Earth, and it goes so far as to say, and I'm not guaranteeing this, but I'm just saying relating what I received,
yeah,
and that's all I can do. I can only speak about my own experiences. Um, that the Earth said it wants us humans to develop a device whereby it can speak to us in our language. So it would be like a telephone to the Earth, so to speak.
yeah,
And it says basically through its ability to change its electrical field, that's how it could communicate with us, and we could learn to tap into it to translate it into our language, so to speak. And
yeah,
that would be, and it says once we have that intimate and solid connection between humans and the earth, everything will change. There's no area that will not be touched by this. If we're
yeah,
talking about weather or natural catastrophes or agriculture or energy creation or even our love relationships. There's so much that she has to tell us. And it
Right.
begins by relating to her, and we relate to her when we see her.
Yeah.
Otherwise, to us, the earth is just this abstract, enormous thing because we don't see much. Most of the time we're in rooms, in buildings, in cubes,
Yeah.
large or small cubes. We seldom go out. And I
Right.
asked I asked the earth once, what would you suggest to the readers of this book uh, about how to connect with you? And he said, well, I would want you to go outside, and if you're in a city, go to a park and speak to me just like that in any way that comes to you, and
Hmm.
then listen with
Yeah.
all your senses, and um, I think it's important that we give it the benefit of the doubt. I mean, you can do that, and if nothing happens, that's okay. That's nothing lost.
Right.
But if it requires you to want to speak, and that's it. I mean, if it said in the beginning of one of the books, this book is like a telephone ringing, and you can choose if to pick it up or not. If you don't
Yeah.
want to, you don't have to. But if you actively start speaking to me, that's the best way to start establishing a connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
You should
We're so
take.
in, like, I like that you brought up the inside element because we're not nearly as exposed to just natural sunlight and grass and getting your feet on the earth. And if you start to go back out to that electromagnetic field that you're connected to and just reground and get quiet with yourself, even if you don't hear a voice or a communication the way that you did, you're feeling and you're listening with sincerity. Everyone's going to have their own experience, but you're still getting insight and you're having an experience that you can't maybe even put into words sometimes, but you get the shift.
Yeah. And a lot of people are doing this already. I mean, there
Yep.
are lots of groups, those who go into the forest, the whole, what's it called, the Japanese uh, habit of going
Gardens.
into yeah, Ryukyu or something like that. Yeah. And so
Hmm.
there's a lot. It's nothing new. It's nothing
Yeah.
new. So it's nothing we have to be afraid of. it's
Yeah.
it's it's so natural. It's our home. It's
Yeah.
our
It's
home.
returning to nature. Yeah. Getting back into relationship with something that we
Yes,
had a relationship with that we've
yes,
somewhat
yes,
severed.
we did. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's something I wanted to ask you about too, because I had a friend who was a ethnobotanist and he lived with me before he died and spent many years learning about sacred plants. That was his
Okay.
orientation. And his
Okay.
sister studied Zen. And so she came more from that perspective of meditation, mindfulness, and connecting in that way through stillness and things of that nature. But he came from it through master teacher plants. And you've heard of these, I know, because I've heard you speak about it. But things like peyote and ayahuasca and these
Right.
wachuma, San Pedro, these things are different, but different cultures through different time would engage these plants, would even say that they taught them how to prepare them and how to eat them if done in a right container. And when you do that, even psilocybin, mushrooms, I've had my experience where I just sit on the mountaintop in Sedona, and if you eat them, not saying other people should do this, of course, because we're so disconnected and we don't have the right cultural context. And there's so much that needs to go into how to deal with that contextual experience. But it is obvious that when you eat these intelligent plants that are part of the earth, they actually allow the earth, if you will, or whatever it is, to communicate and show you the intricacies and the awe and the wonder in its own way. So I do believe in the power of sacred plants, but I think that the West has taken it and turned it into a commodification and some sort of trauma healing therapeutic thing when it's like back to nature again. We don't have that right relationship to it. What are your thoughts on psychedelic plants?
I totally agree with you. But first of all, I have to add that during my connections with the earth, up on the mountain and during the ceremony and so on, there were no teacher plants, as I call them, involved at all. and because I wanted to keep it free of that, because it also needs to be more the way everybody reacts, and not somebody who's taken some kind of plant
Yeah.
stuff. But
Right.
I fully agree that by taking stuff like that, it really expands you, and you can see whole. You can get a whole different, not only perspective, but a framework for your life, so to speak, and for
Hmm.
where you are. And it opens up vistas, and especially natural plants like that. Although, I mean, yes, a lot of this stuff can be used for therapy, and that's what they sort of use to make it socially acceptable. But even a guy like Cary Grant took LSD and really had big benefits from that. So I've uh, I've done I haven't done enough of things like that, and I'd like to, because but I'd like to do them in South America in those circumstances, and
Hmm.
not on a little workshop here or something. Yeah, so
Right. I agree. Yeah, you got to do it. You don't want to take a jaguar out of the jungle and stick it in a city and expect it to be the same being, you know?
that's right. That's right. That's right.
If you were going to give that TED talk, I know you said something about that. What is the concept you're going to share if you do?
More or less the same concept I've shared with you. You're actually
Awesome.
you're my second TED talk about this stuff. My first
Awesome.
my first podcast. I mean, my first one was with a Swedish podcaster, but it was in English. Uh, I spoke there for an hour and a half, and I heard nothing. There was nothing after that, no reaction. But this time, I will be pushing it. I'm now at the point where I need to go out with this stuff.
Mm,
I'm
okay.
I, I turned 75 years old, so I do expect to live another 20 years, but even if I do, I have to hurry to get the message out. And I'm not sure everybody's going to listen to me,
No,
but
it's beautiful.
well, just having this opportunity is a gate opener, and maybe more will come through that also. And
Absolutely.
I'd probably start out trying to get a TEDx talk here in Munich or someplace. I live in the south of Germany at Lake Constance, so it's not far from there.
Awesome.
And uh, I'm looking forward to it, because I'm so full of it that I need to share this experience, because if I don't, it's like I've had this incredible thing happening to me, and I just keep on living my life as if nothing happened, and that's not
Beautiful.
okay. I was given this gift for a reason, and the reason was even spoken, that I go out and talk about it.
Right.
And it's been hesitation. As a scientist, I certainly hesitate to speak about this stuff, because I know that I will also be the more famous quote I become, and I am not famous in any sense of the word. The more famous I become, the more negativity I'm going to attract also. I
Yeah.
mean, scientists, like you said, they're going to say, the best ones are going to say, okay, we don't know everything yet, so we shouldn't just say it's all bogus. And we can maybe agree that he had these experiences, but there's lots of people who've had experiences, and they've spoken to God and Jesus and everybody. And does that make it real? Well, it makes it real for them, but does it make it real for others? Well, that's an ongoing thing. If this thing, the earth, we live on this earth, and that's clear for all of us. And when we see her, let's see what happens to us all when we see her live and we live with her day and night, and as the seasons grow and so on. And if we then, on top of that, can hear the earth speak to us, I was thinking of having these globes, and then you turn on the recorder and you have them quote my book. And,
Oh,
and
how
so
interesting.
so you can see the earth and hear her speak at the same time.
Oh, cool.
And,
Yeah,
and, and
there's a that would be an interesting idea to have a there's people that go to the different planetariums and do these tours where they do, I forget the name of the one, but they play music and have you looking up
yes,
obviously to the
yeah,
cosmos. Well, you could
yeah,
do one where the voice is coming through and there's music and there's a
sure,
almost like an experiential thing.
yes,
That would be
yes,
epic.
yeah, yeah. My problem is that I have I don't know how to make these things happen. I've been so focused on my own interest.
Yeah.
I haven't been connected enough with technology and all this kind of
Hmm.
stuff for hustling and doing and raising money and everything like this. I'm having to learn that anew, or I'm too old for that actually. But to find people who want to work with me on this, this
Hmm.
is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for
Yeah.
people who are open to the possibility that we are living on a live earth and that she's conscious and can speak to us ultimately, and
Yeah.
who's willing to help me not only spread that message but make different things happen, to change our view of the planet and our place with the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the best things or most important things the Earth said was, I have, throughout history, you have been my children, and I have treated you that way. I have given you what you needed, and so on. Now I wish to speak to you as partners. That's a very big shift. We're not dealing with this over. And I asked her, are you in a sense a god like Gaia, and or goddess like Gaia? And the answer was, in a sense, you can say I am that, but when you say that, you are at the same time forgetting that you yourselves are gods and goddesses. And that makes us peers with the. I think that any being can communicate with any other being, however large or small they are. I mean, if we get a splinter in our finger, that's the splinter communicating with a pretty big body in comparison with a splinter, or
Yeah.
or a drop of LSD or something. I mean,
Hmm.
we but those are direct effects. We can communicate with everything, like you said, with the pen also.
Yeah.
So so it's going to be interesting to see how what happens when we start communicating with everything around us,
Yeah.
realizing that it's all alive. It's all alive.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and one thing that inspires me here is too that just the simple, interesting conversation that we're having, it's shared to the internet and it's kept forever. It's like a preservation that lives on. And whenever I capture people, one of the people I recorded my third episode was Sanchi Redda, and she's in her 70s, and but I was like, I bought the equipment to record her because now I'm listening to people like Alan Watts and Terrence McKenna who are no longer here. But all these new artists take it and use AI and music, and these people are now living on and more popular than they ever were when they were alive. So you don't know where it's going to go and who's inspired by your book and by your globe and by all of your ideas that will take it and with all of their different abilities use technology to collaborate and create things that we can't even imagine 20, 30, 40 years from now. So I love to think of it as a living happening, and you're doing your part. And even showing up today was a big part of that. That's why I think podcasts are amazing technology that will amplify some of what you are and who you are and what you're sharing. So,
Well, thank you. I didn't know if this was an audio or a video. I asked ChatGPT, who said it's an audio.
oh, okay, yeah. Well, not many people watch them, but it's nice if someone wants, even myself, if I'm listening to a podcast, I'll click and see who the person is. It gives me a little bit of an understanding because we communicate so much through visual,
Yeah,
fields.
yeah, yeah, we do.
Um, do you mind briefly speaking a little bit about magic in real life and what that is going to entail?
Okay, yeah. In English, I call it Magic and Mystery in Everyday Life. It's a book that I wrote over a year ago, but I haven't had the time to publish it. Not even as self-publishing. Publishing a book, even this book, I don't know how to find a publisher. I know how to find a publisher, but I don't know how to do it,
Mm,
because you have to find a literary agent, and I got somebody online to I paid them to contact 10 publishers. I paid them $200 and nothing came of it. Didn't hear anything more. So, but the book that I will hopefully produce soon or publish soon, probably beginning with a self-publishing, is about about magic and mystery that is, according to me, happening all the time, all around us, and we seldom accept it. We seldom accept it as reality. We say, "Oh, that was just by chance, that weird thing happening." So I picked. I was planning on writing something like my memoirs, although I thought that's kind of boring, both to write things that I've experienced, and I don't know if others are going to be interested. So I thought I'd instead focus on the highlights, and the highlights were the magical things that happened, things that couldn't be explained, but that took me further. And so I chose 25 stories from my own life that had happened to me, real experiences that I could prove, at least to myself, were real. And I put them, I also talked about, well, how could this be explained, even from scientific point of view? And most of them can't unless you change science somehow, and science is always changing. And instead of poo-pooing it all and saying this was just anecdotal evidence or something, well, an anecdote is still something that happened and requires explanation. Repeatability is kind of boring, but it's also not. Those things can be explained and measured and so on, but there's so much more that goes in. There's so much more things that are surrounding us, consciousnesses that are impacting on us.
Yeah.
Sheldrake is a good example of his morphogenetic fields that aren't supposed to exist. They still are not supposed to exist. But some of them were using. I also used some of the tools that I had as part of my spiritual training, and I used them very concretely. I managed to. I wanted a piece of property outside of Phoenix, in a place called Queen Valley, an hour east, and they wanted $1.5 million for it, but I didn't have any money, I'd say. But by talking to the ancestors of the place, through the methods that I learned, everything changed, and I ended up living there for 6 years.
Wow.
And I mean, but many other things some were hilarious things that I experienced, but some were just basically mind-boggling.
Wow.
And so it's like 25 stories that I'm listing there. I'd be happy to send you a copy once I could send it to you as a PDF, so to speak.
That's awesome.
Book yet.
Yeah, and sometimes uploading it to the internet in that format, it only creates a feedback loop through algorithms that would help you to also cultivate more and go deeper, or synthesize it even more, if you will, like taking all of your work you did with geophysics and speaking about it, and you can sort of send the transcript through AI now, and AI say, can you give me a summary and think about the parts that you would critique, and maybe you could make it a little bit better. And so just by putting it on the internet, sometimes it creates its own living thing that then can create it even differently.
But what platform would I use? Substack or?
Yeah, so something simple like a Substack, where you could charge a fee for people to have. You could throw a chapter up. Some artists do this, where you might say, "Hey, here's chapter 1, and if you donate a cup of coffee, $3 or something, I'll give you access to this copy." But at least it's living on the internet, and it's just an idea to get it And then sometimes some of your fans are people that discover it through keywords, because now all the words are on the internet. So it'll actually siphon people to you, I'm guessing. And that'll create opportunities that you can't even imagine as well without even tapping into the ancestors. But the ancestor thing, maybe go back and ask those folks for some help.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I do believe in that too. Actually, it's something in breath work I do, is remember that we're older and connected to everyone that's ever lived.
Yeah.
And you aren't just this new thing with all your cultural conditioning. We're so much more connected to all of our past. And if we just get out of our own way, we can actually tap into that stuff. And I want to read what you've written there, because I'm sure you've had some profound experiences.
Yeah, and there the landscape too is alive.
Yes,
Mountains, you
exactly.
can communicate with mountains and
Yes.
rivers. You know, they even have the rights as a person in Ecuador, I think it is, or Colombia, where it's enshrined in their Pachamama
Yep.
as being a person that you can that has rights, so to speak.
Amazing.
It is amazing, and
Like
I
the
even
saguaro here has rights. The saguaro cactus has
oh,
rights.
yeah. We had lots of them on our property. I really love them. I
Yeah.
read today that for the first time, a kind of stingless bee in Ecuador has now been given the rights of a person.
Wow. See,
So
that's
it's the
beautiful.
animals also. Yeah, it is beautiful. They
Yeah.
need to be preserved just like everything else. You can't just go out and kill things. When I see a
Yeah.
mine or a copper mine out there in Globe or wherever in Arizona, it
Hmm.
hurts my heart to see how the wounds that they dig into the earth.
Yeah.
All the mining
Yeah.
that's going on, taking out stuff, and of course, at some point there's not going to be any more. And
Yeah.
then all the oil that and they start saying, okay, we need to cut down on oil, and then they start digging up new oil. That's
Yeah. It's
that's
like we
not.
just looking at the earth as something to extract and rape and pillage, and it's unfortunate. So I think that what you've created through your work and what you're creating still with the globes is a huge task that will ripple, and it'll help people to start to see that relationship as sacred, really.
Yeah, well, I hope I'm giving it a little shove forwards. This insight that we so strongly need in these times, especially, and the Earth itself is now coming into focus, and it's not just about unemployment or the state of the economy or politics or whatever. Those that are defining the what's in the news, so to speak, but when I was asking myself, when will I feel that my work has been done? And my answer to that was, well, the first time when the Earth is quoted in the evening news.
Yeah, when it has a voice, right?
Yes, when it has a voice and that it is spread out, she is speaking. But ultimately, also, like you speak to AI, being able to log into EI
Yeah.
and getting answers from that. Well, that's a bit in the future, but still, I'm convinced that it will happen. And it's
Yeah.
not so far away. It's not so far away.
I love it.
And
Yeah.
you are doing an incredible job spreading all these highly interesting, this awakening in a way that you're doing by interviewing these people who have looked deeply into so many important aspects of our existence. So,
Mm.
so I really honor you for that.
Oh,
That's an incredible and important work, totally important work. And you, I'm just focusing on one little thing here, although I have a second project which is equally strong in my life, and that is a project in Nepal, where I grew
mm.
up partly.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
if
I
you
wanted
know
to
that.
ask you about this. Yes, I read about it, but let's share it.
Well, I went back to Nepal in 2016, just a year after the big earthquake there, and I met a guy who had an NGO, and he asked me for help and we developed projects. And my wife was with me part of the time, so we developed projects for schools, teaching them about puberty and uh, menstruation, menstrual issues, and so on. And we did this in 120 schools. We trained nurses to go into these schools and teach about these topics and gender equality and harassment and things like this for those who are about to enter into puberty. Now we took that model and we are teaching school nurses to do this in all the schools in about 900 schools in a fifth of the population of Nepal.
Wow.
But then an even more interesting thing came up. I read an article in the Kathmandu Post, national magazine, about something about that the women in one of the villages where we had been working, high up in the mountains, 2,700 meters, whatever that is, 8,000 feet or 9,000 feet or something. And the situation there was the women had to work all day and had to give their money to their husbands who spent their days playing cards. And the men took the money and bought alcohol and drank in the evenings and went home and beat their children. A quote from, and this was the same in all villages around them. That was the norm.
Wow. Horrible.
And there was one of the women there, just a quote from one of the women there was, if you walk through the village in the evening, you could hear the screams of women and children when they were fighting.
Wow.
And one day, one woman in one house had enough. She said, the others just took it, but I couldn't. And she went and brought all the other women together. They went to the alcohol maker in town, in the village, and said, you're going to stop making alcohol. Well, they had a pretty strong impulse, so he stopped making alcohol. Then they charged everybody who was found drunk in the streets a fairly high fine. They used the money to improve the infrastructure in the village, meaning they put in water in the houses that didn't have any and built toilets and so on. And They started to do income generating things. And then they actually got help from the municipality. And they've now built 18 greenhouses so that they can make vegetables that doesn't grow up there otherwise.
Wow.
And they took over the whole finances of where the men had taken care of all the money. They now took care of the money. If the men wanted something, they had to go to the women and ask them for money.
That's
they
amazing.
Just changed it all. And now this village is a prosperous village.
Wow.
But I read about this, but none of the other villages around had done anything about this. None of them had followed suit. And to me, this was an amazing thing. People talk about female empowerment. And I say you cannot empower somebody else. Self-empowerment, which was what these women did, that's the only real power. The other kind of power, if you become a general, you have a lot of power, but that can be taken away from you, like the guy in China just recently. So I thought we have to spread this impulse. And the village was called Khori, Khori. So I invented the Khori impulse. And,
cool.
And I took, as a test, I thought, how can you spread this idea? Well, the best way to spread an idea is through storytelling.
Yep.
So I took two women and two men to 10 different villages. I found foundations here that would support this project in Germany and sent the money over there. And then they went to 10 different villages for 2 or 3 days in each village and just spoke about their experiences, just like I'm speaking about my experiences. And we did a survey before and afterwards. And it turned out that in more than half of the villages, they had done a very similar thing. The women had gotten together, created, and most of them, they had stopped alcohol. In some places, it was difficult because the men said, hey, I got a license for this. And that was hard to overcome. But in Khori, nobody had a license. So it was a mixed picture, but it was enough for me that it was so successful that I'm now planning to, on the 1st of May, start a project with 50 villages. So they will
Wow.
go to 50 villages. And I think once that has happened, once you have like 30 or 40 villages where the women have taken over, and the women are better than the men in 3 main areas. One is corruption. Corruption is endemic in Nepal. The women in tendency are not corrupt. Secondly, they take care of family. This means that they promote education, healthcare, things like this, and clothing and whatever. They really see to it that the village is intact and growing and blossoming. And the third thing is that they are much better at handling money. So once they get in charge of the money, then things happen very much to the better. And this would happen on a national level also, as I see it. But I think that once we have 30 or 40 villages that show how they blossom by the women taking over, that will become something like a wildfire that spreads among other villages and further on. So that's to me, these projects, I realized I need to put my whole focus on one of these issues. I cannot suddenly stop this thing and say, okay, maybe somebody else will take over. I would like somebody else to take over so I could focus more on the earth, but I have to continue with that now. So I'm doing both, which maybe keeps me a bit more sane. I'm not all the time out in the universe. I'm down with the women in the villages in Nepal.
Man, that's amazing. You're doing some really good work. And even what you just said, I can take that 6 or 5 minute spiel and you can put it on your internet, on your little website or whatever. And then I even think people could be inspired to create a little mini docu-series or a documentary that spreads awareness. There's so many things that can happen where people help you create that mission.
That's great, because I did actually in April of this year, I went to Nepal with a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. He made a 20-minute documentary about this project or about this village and the other villages, and we traveled around there. So, but I don't know how to spread this. That's where I don't have no idea.
Yeah. Okay. Well, other people do that have those gifts and skills, and if they're inspired by what you're doing, they get to help. It's a collaborative effort.
I agree, but I need to be able to contact those other people, and that's where I don't.
Well, you called NASA when you had Al Gore's recommendation by talking to the Earth. Maybe you asked the Earth, who should I contact?
Yeah.
So,
she likes whatever I do.
I love it. Man, you are really fascinating, and it's been fun to extract a little bit of your life's work. But I always ask everyone, if you were going to die today, say this was your last day on Earth,
right?
What would you want to share with the world? What would you want to say?
Okay, I should have known this question before, so I could be prepared. But what would I say? Follow your intuition, your curiosity, and your love. And I would probably add, and don't forget your excitement. Follow your excitement, and don't forget sexuality, because that's where we all came from, and we were all born through sexuality, and we tend to see that as sinful still, even after all these thousands of millennia. And that's another big issue, and the Earth speaks to that issue also. So that's all in my book. So I just say, get on with your life, enjoy it, and follow your excitement.
I love that. Man, it's been fun learning from you today and exposing you to more people. It'll be nice. I'll put all of your links to your website and everything in the show notes so that people can find your books and everything that you're working on. So
great. Then I'll send you a link to the Nepalese documentary.
Awesome. That would be excellent.
That one too. It's a quiet thing about a very active woman. So
I would love to see that.
Thank you so much for spreading the words.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was an honor.
Your own experiences, somebody should interview you. That would be enormous. Because you also
Maybe.
pick up so much from others. So yeah. Has
Hmm.
anybody done podcasts with you?
I've had a few people have me on, but I'm still in the very beginning phase of my life. I feel like I'm a baby still, so I'm
How
very
old are
curious.
you?
I'm
Oh,
44.
before. Yeah, you're right. You're still a baby.
Yeah, I'm very much like I'm just learning and growing and having a good time, like you said, and
I had the
trying to
feeling
find solutions to problems as I go.
when I turned 40, that day I felt like finally I'm an adult. Before that, I didn't have that feeling. And
Yeah,
so, yeah. Okay. Well,
awesome.
great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it and subscribe to the show and rate the show. That helps people to discover it. And enjoy the next episode.
What we call reality is in fact nothing more than a culturally sanctioned and linguistically reinforced